Report podcast is brought to you by the Westport Library. Welcome to the Ruden Report podcast. I'm Dave Ruden, and spring season is over. The 2020-21 season is over. We're coming off championship weekend, and it was full of FCAC teams, full of FCAC successes. We've got 5 FCAC champions, a number of finalists that had terrific runs through their playoffs, and all in all, we made it through the spring season, really, when you think about it, with really minimal disruption, and the disruptions that came really were in the first 2 weeks. So kudos to everybody involved for giving us a real spring season and giving us the first real state playoffs that we've had since, if you really technically want to get into it, to completion, going back to the winter, 2 winters ago. So it was great to see. And I think this won't necessarily be the last podcast until the fall season, but it's going to be the last podcast. I'm going to take a little bit of a break in the next day or two, and we'll have some periodical podcasts throughout the summer. But I wanted to kind of wrap up spring sports and talk a little bit about this past weekend, and actually tell you a little bit about a change forthcoming for the Ruden Report that I announced to the public on the site a little while ago. And joining me for this last 2020-2021 podcast is somebody who's going to be saying goodbye to his high school career as well, and that's my good friend from New Canaan and senior intern Ian Nicholas. Ian, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Dave. It's been a crazy week. Its graduation is right around the corner. It's going to be a bittersweet end to my 4-year run at NCHS. It's been amazing with so many great people, and it definitely in the town of New Canaan, so many great athletics to cover. I've been blessed to have a great career in that regard, covering so many great teams. And we had the chance to cover a lot of great teams this weekend with a couple of big champions. So can't wait for one last time to dive into a couple state champions who are well-deserving and right from the Fairfield County area. So a lot of big news there.
And before we kick it off, just a little bit of advance notice, but Ian is just completing his internship, as well as Dylan Goodman, a senior talented photographer at Staples. 2 projects we haven't had in a while I think are going to be of great interest to the public. Ian's put together a senior video yearbook, and Dylan has spent the last 2 weeks shooting senior portraits of some of the top athletes. So excited to show those to the public. But for right now, let's bounce around a couple of the sports. We're not really going to talk too much about the volleyball. Just the sport, unfortunately, as a boutique site, I don't get a chance to really get to. But kudos to the Darien volleyball team, boys volleyball team, on an undefeated season and getting to the state final and beating Enfield. A great run for them. But probably from the FCAC world and the game I was at, the one that garnered the most attention for a number of reasons was the Norwalk West Hill final. A terrific game, a terrific pitcher's duel starting with Kyle Kipp of West Hill and Brendan Edvardson of Norwalk. Game came down, was scoreless till the top of the 7th inning when Konstantinos Kadonis hit a pinch hit single. Javier Gonzalez came in and and closed out a 1-0 victory, the first state championship in Norwalk history. State championship for Coach Ryan Mitchell in his very first go. So it took Norwalk all these years. It took Ryan Mitchell one try, and it was kind of cool because there was Norwalk baseball royalty watching. Most notably, Pete Tucci, the veteran coach who actually was the head coach when Ryan was an assistant, and Angelo Bruno as well. And Angelo went on to an outstanding college career at all. So I think, Ian, we'll start off with the baseball.
That we will, Dave. And it was great to see an FCAC matchup in the title game, and between two teams that really just worked hard for it and came, I don't want to say out of nowhere, but there were some great teams in that Class L pool. And those two teams, Norwalk and Westport, I feel like they really deserved the spot that they were in. As you mentioned, there was a lot of hype around this game. And I think Norwalk just had a great story, from Alistair Moran being a big ace this year, but he couldn't play in the championship game due to pitching restrictions. And they still found a way to get a win. And what a way it was played. 1-0 the final score between two teams that really can explode offensively. So I'll ask you that question before we touch on any of the other sports. Were you surprised at the outcome scoring-wise? Were you expecting a low pitching duel, or were you expecting a game where the offense was going to be at the forefront?
No, I definitely was not expecting a pitcher's duel. I don't think anybody was. Westfield had not been shut out all year, and I think 2 or 3 times they had season lows of 2 runs. So I think the storyline coming in was how many runs was Westhill going to score, and would Norwalk's offense be strong enough to match and surpass that, and would there be any mistakes defensively that would have an impact in the game? And it was just a really tout pitcher's duel. Credit to the pitchers on both teams. Kyle Kipp, only a sophomore at Westhill, and he's going to be back, and West Hill's going to be back. But it was just a great game. Konstantinos Kidonis, who wasn't a storyline before this week, ended up being one. He was the starting first baseman, and he should have caught the last out of the tournament of the season, and wasn't hitting, lost his starting job. But he came through with what proved to be the game-winning hit in the state semifinals against Greenwich, and then came on and he was called on in the 7th inning and delivered what proved to be the only run of the game against West Hill. And it climaxed what was really just an unbelievable run for the FCAC. You had all 4 semifinalists came from the league, and only Greenwich at the beginning as the 4 seed was somebody that you would have, I think, predicted getting there. You had Norwalk, West Hill, and Brian McMahon. And Brian McMahon was the highest seeded of the other 3, and that was at 18. And you had 6 of the 8 quarterfinalists were from the FCAC. So you had Greenwich Ward in a quarterfinal. That easily could have been a state final. It was the FCAC final. And then you had Norwalk Ridgefield in the quarterfinal, and Ridgefield certainly had a good year and had a lot of strong moments. But if anyone told you were going to have 2 FCAC teams in the final, I think Ward, Greenwich, Trumbull, Staples, those would have been teams that would have been mentioned as most likely finalists. So it was just a great story. Norwalk in particular, but West Hill too, had really good fan bases that turned out. And it's 2 programs that haven't had widespread, have had pockets of success with their sports programs, but not widespread compared to maybe some of the other teams in the league. And it was just so great to see two cities like that get to have this moment. And I wrote this, and when you ever write something like this, you're accused of being a Pollyanna, how there were no losers. But really, I'm not going to sit here today and say that the West Hill baseball team is a loser. It lost Saturday, but what it accomplished was just absolutely tremendous. And Norwalk's just a great story. Navigated a very difficult trail, starting with an Amity team that's been a perennial finalist over the last decade, 15 years, and Alistair Moran, who you mentioned before, throws a no-hitter right off the bat. And if you're going to look for, there were signs. Each team had really, really good runs during the course of the season. Norwalk at midseason, West Hill at the end of the regular season. So I think both those teams at different points of the FCAC season showed what they were capable of, but both of them also had downswings. But you get to the state playoffs and you only have to be, I won't say only have to be, you have to be strong and play good baseball for 4 or 5 games over 2 weeks. And West Hill and Norwalk did it. And again, just kudos to West Hill coach Mike Rivelis, who's done a great job and has a young team and very, very easily could be back next year and in the forthcoming years. And same with Ryan Mitchell. When the awards ceremony was going on, I was standing with Norwalk Athletic Director Doug Marchetti, and I said to him, if he does this in the first year, you've set a new standard here. What happens if you don't win state titles the next few years? You're going to fire him in 3 or 4 years. But jokingly, obviously, but great job to Ryan. Two real likable coaches. All 4 semifinalists, first year coaches too. I mean, it was just as a sports writer, I'm always asked what I root for, and I root for the good story. And FCAC baseball certainly gave me that during the state playoffs.
That they did, and again, that's just an amazing point that you touch on. State playoff. All 4 of the semifinalists were FCAC teams, and all of them were led by first-year coaches. Some of them who didn't even get the chance to coach in their first real season last year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So it was a great story all around. It was a great defensive battle. You couldn't have asked for a better title game, and 2 great coaches too. So those 2 programs have bright futures ahead. And I've seen both of them play in person. And they're both great teams with great guys. So we wish them nothing but the best, and congrats to Norwalk on their first ever title win. So let's move from Norwalk and West Hill in the baseball final now to softball, where we also had another FCAC team matched up with Southington. It was the Fairfield Ludlow Falcons, which are led by one of our Ruden interns, Allie Clark. She's had a great career there, and her career finished with that game in the championship. So, Dave, how about you take us through this one? I know we've been following Ludlow very closely throughout softball all year. And what did you see from the Falcons in this big title game with their season ending there?
A game that actually now is, especially on social media since it happened, has been a little bit of a wash in controversy in that. And there's been some sketchy video on social media, sketchy in terms of quality, but Southington rallied in the 7th inning and came from 2 runs down to beat Ludlow 4-3. Just an unbelievable season for the Falcons. They only lost 2 games all year. They lost a regular season game to St. Joseph, which got to the Class L final, and mention them quickly. They had a great year, but lost to Massac in the final. So only 2 losses, but unfortunately for the cadets in the FCAC and the state final. But Ludlow then bounces back and has a great run through the state tournament. And you mentioned, we mentioned Trumbull before. Ludlow beat them 11-1, in the semifinal. Ludlow had to beat Staples as well during the course of the tournament, and that was this FCAC semifinal. But they played a great game, but they were leading 2-1, and apparently there was a stoppage in play, and umpire was going out to talk to the pitcher. Should have been dead ball, nothing going on, and apparently the Southington coach told runner on third base to head for home. The runner scored. The run was allowed, and so instead of having a 1-run lead, now it's a 2-2 game. And certainly as things went on, it changed the dynamic. So I wasn't there, so I'm not going to speak to the controversy too much because the game's over, and unfortunately you can't do anything about it. I know the Ludlow people were certainly unhappy. It seems like going through what went on in Twitter, the general softball public are the ones most up in arms about it, just because you don't want to see a call any game, any level, where a bad call changes the outcome of a game. But that certainly happened here. But kudos kudos to Ludlow. They had a mixture of three really good seniors, and they had a whole bunch of really good underclassmen, including a few freshmen, most notably pitcher Alex Louie. And I think the culture's been changed, and I think the seniors are gonna look back and say we're part of the group that really changed Ludlow softball, because they've been a solid team, and I think this is going to be the beginning of a lot of long runs in the state playoffs, and I think they're going to be back not too distant future in state final, and hopefully for them have a better outcome. But it's we've kind of talked St. Joe's and Trumbull the last couple of years. I think Ludlow's going to be part of that conversation. So again, congratulations to Ludlow, and it's just too bad that a great season ended one win short of sweeping postseason titles.
Yep, it is a shame with the final outcome, and the controversy doesn't help there. But in the end, it was a great year for Ludlow, and hopefully, as you've mentioned, they can continue to build on to the success. They've already been a great team, but not a team that, can get all the way, and they proved they can get all the way this year. We know how dominant St. Joe's is, and Trumbull's great as well, so hopefully in the future we see those three teams stand out and make it a little bit of a deeper pool when it becomes FCAC playoff time and state playoff time. So now we're done with softball and baseball. Let's move over to some lacrosse, and what about we start with the girls, Dave? It was an FCAC battle between Fairfield Ludlow and Darien. And Darien, like they tend to do a lot during postseason time, they won. But this year was a little different for the Blue Wave. They had to go through some ups and downs, especially when playing New Canaan, and they beat New Canaan to get to the final. And then when they got to the final, they took care of business against the Falcons. So break us down about how that game went, who Darien's stars were, and where both teams stand.
It was a strange season for Darien. Number one, this was one of Lisa Lindley's younger teams, and she always schedules out of state competition to get her team ready. And I don't know how they would have fared if they played out-of-state teams, but this is certainly a younger team that probably would have benefited a little bit more from some bigger games, because I think really Darien and New Canaan sat on the top of the pedestal, and then there were the next best teams. If Darien was looking at anything coming into the playoffs, it was the fact that it was 0-3 against New Canaan. Biggest rival, lost to New Canaan when New Canaan played them first game coming out of quarantine at the start of the season, lost them in the FCAC championship. And I think the way the draw fell, everybody was looking at the FCAC semifinal game, the fourth meeting between the teams, as the de facto state final, and Darien put it all together. It's hard to beat a good team 2 times, 3 times. It was really hard to beat the Blue Wave 4 times, and especially with the return of sophomore Chloe Humphrey, who is one of the best players nationally, not just in the state, but nationally. So you add her to the team, you have her now having played with the team for a couple of weeks, and I think she both gave the entire team more confidence, and obviously she gave the team more productivity, and she also took some of the burden because of defenses following her away from some of the other players. And so an 8-4 win in the semifinals, and they get a final meeting against Fairfield Ludlow, which you kind of got to look at 2 ways. Ludlow, as soon as the draw came out, as much as Ludlow was the 7th seed coming in, you kind of looked at the draw and who was there, and Greenwich was one of the better FCAC teams there, but a bunch of state teams. Ludlow's really taken it up to the next level, and their program has really improved, and they're kind of on the cusp. They're kind of on the cusp of doing what the softball team has done at the school. So on the one hand, it's easy to kind of say, well, Ludlow had an easy draw, but on the other hand, Ludlow took care of business throughout. Basically beat the three teams it needed to beat soundly. And in terms of what the program's trying to accomplish, a lot of kids got a chance to play in the final, anywhere from a great senior like Callie Cirilli, who's headed to USC, to a lot of younger players who are hoping to continue to do this. So even though Ludlow lost to Darien and it was a heavy underdog, it was a great experience, I'm sure, for all the players. They got to see what it's like to be in a state final. And hopefully, as far as the Falcons are concerned, this will be the way to, this was an obstacle in terms of trying to do what Darien does, which is get to the state finals seemingly every year, and now has won 7 of the last 8 finals played. So congratulations to Coach Lisa Lindley's team on bouncing back, and congratulations to the Falcons on a state semifinalist and a state finalist and FCX semifinalist. So nothing at all to be ashamed about. Quite the opposite with Ludlow.
Yes, the Falcons are on the rise in multiple sports, and that's a good young bunch of girls. I know they're very, Aiden Blank over from Fairfield, although he's high on them, and he's covered them a lot too. I've talked to him about their team, so they're heading in the right direction. Certainly, and they should be title contenders in the FCAC and in the state tournament for years to come with New Canaan and Darien. So can't wait to see what they do. They've got a lot of good younger personnel too, with a couple star sophomores, so can't wait to see. Our last big game we want to touch on was one of the more highly anticipated state tournament games. And also there were 2 FCAC boys lacrosse finals. We can talk about St. Joe's as well and their Class S win. But Dave, how about you start with the Ridgefield Fairfield prep breakdown? I was able to be at the game. It was a crazy game. It was a tale of 2.5 quarters and then 1.5 quarters. It was a completely different game after the 4:40 mark in the third quarter. But in the end, Ridgefield wins its second state title in 3 years, 8-5 over Fairfield Prep.
Yeah, real quickly first, just congratulations to St. Joe's on their Class S title. They seem to get there just about every year, and they certainly benefit from playing an FCAC schedule once they get to the state playoffs. So that's something that really plays to their benefit in the state playoffs. So congratulations on the Cadets win over East Catholic. But Ridgefield was really an intriguing team, and I covered them a lot this year. So I saw the good, the bad, and not the ugly, but the good, the bad, or the not so good, and everything in between. It was a Ridgefield team early in the year I thought was the second best. I was voting them early on second best team in the league, I think, behind Darien. A lot of talent on the team. Biggest trouble was draw controls. That issue's been well chronicled. And then Kai Prohaska, the great defender who was filling in on draw controls, he suffers a broken hand and had to miss some time. And Ridgefield struggled a little bit before that. They won their final 2 regular season games against in games they were a heavy favorite, but before that they lost 3 games to teams that were FCAC contenders. So going into the state playoffs, you looked at the draw and it was very similar to what Ludlow girls where they were at, in that one draw was more loaded than the other, and you had Darien and you had Wilton and you had Fairfield Prep on one half of the draw, and then you had Ridgefield and Staples on the other half. And and we'll talk about seeding, not today, but very, very soon. But Ridgefield goes into as the 14th seed. If that doesn't tell you that there's a problem with seeding in lacrosse, nothing will. But they have to meet Staples right off the bat, and Staples and Ridgefield were battling for who were the second best team behind Darien a good part of the year, and Ridgefield comes away with a 4-3 win right off the bat, and then get two games where they're a heavy favorite. They beat Simsbury by 15. They beat Hall by 12, and then they get Fairfield Prep in the final. And Fairfield Prep did a tap dancing over FCAC teams to get to the final. They beat Greenwich in first game by just a goal. Then a magnificent second half, and they shocked Darien. That might have been the most surprising game. One of the most surprising games outside of the FCAC baseball teams in all the state playoffs. And then Fairfield Prep just decimated Wilton. I was at that game. Prep played really well, and not to take anything away from Prep, but Wilton played, other than the FCAC tournament game against Staples, played its next worst game of the year. I don't know whether if it played as well one of its better games, whether it still would have won, but it certainly would have been a competitive game. And then you had a Ridgefield Prep final that I just thought was really, really intriguing. I don't know who the favorite was going in. Honestly, if I was a bookmaker and I was asked to set the odds, I don't know who the favorite was coming in. Ridgefield winning is not a shock to me. I think Prep was a really hot team, but I thought, Ridgefield talent-wise, maybe just in terms of natural talent, maybe only Darien is a team that surpassed it. But you know what? Ridgefield did what Darien couldn't in the state tournament, and they beat Prep. They rallied from a big early deficit, and they had to deal with the Colsey family dynamic. Roy Colsey, the coach, I'm not quite sure where it came from, or if this was something he was doing to motivate his team, but he certainly took an us against the world mentality to rally his players. And if there are places this happened, I didn't see it. I won't say, maybe I missed it, but he didn't think his team was getting respected. I didn't see where that might have come from. I certainly had, I certainly thought they were a dangerous team, and I'm certainly not shocked that they got to the state final. And if I'm shocked that they won the title, it's only because I thought Darien would have gotten there and won it. But everything that the Tigers did early in the season when I covered them, they were a great team, and looked to be the team that could finish the way it did. And then you had Kyle Colsey getting an appendectomy the morning of the game. He's one of the elite players for the Tigers, and he was actually at the game. How somebody gets an appendectomy and then shows up at the game, I have absolutely no idea. I don't know if the Colsey family snuck him out of the hospital or what, but hey, we wish him a speedy recovery, and it's great that he could be at the game. And then his brother Ryan steps up and scores 4 goals and leads a dramatic turnaround from an early deficit, and Ridgefield sitting atop the boys lacrosse world. So it was an interesting state tournament. It was a state tournament where some of the better games were earlier than you would have preferred to see them. But, kudos to the Tigers, to Roy Colsey. If there was anybody doubting his players, they're not anymore. And, it was a great final. I wish I could have been in 2 places at once, but congratulations. It sounds like you got to see a good game there. Call a good game there.
I did with NFHS Network, and it really was crazy. It was 5-2 late in the third quarter, and Prep looked like they were starting to run away with it. But it's just the offensive explosion of Ridgefield on display. Just the talent that they have, as you mentioned, was unbelievable. The shot-making ability, not only from Ryan Colsey, but also from guys like Luke Winkler, who was an All-FCAC first-team player, and some tremendous first-half saves from Matt Shepard, kept that team in the game. And especially when you have Kai Prohaska back, he was a force late in that game on eliminating any opportunity for Prep to win those ground balls and to get easy shots. So Prep's a great team, and I know we're not an FCAC team, but they are a fun team to watch when they play FCAC teams.
They got a lot of good young players on that team. That's a team. That's a team that FCAC teams are going to really have to contend with. You mentioned him. Shout out to Matthew Shepard for goalies sometimes get overshadowed by players who score goals, just like defenders often did. But he was magnificent. It was a goaltending duel, the first round game, the 4-3 win over Staples. So that everybody said 4-3. There were delays. No, it was a game that should have been probably in the 7-6, 8-7, 9-8 area, but the goalie stood out. So congratulations to him, and congratulations to Ridgefield. And why don't we kind of wrap up here with a couple of things? Just congratulations to everybody in the FCAC on, number one, getting to play pretty much a complete spring season. We're real lucky between the luck of having people in this state being much more conscious of things and in terms of dealing with the pandemic, and people doing the right things, and a microcosm of that was the sports world. And we're lucky that any problems that there were very early in this season. It's a shame that New Canaan had to go through what it had to go through, and there were a few other teams in the same boat. But fortunately, it was very minimal. And all in all, considering what we went through, it was a pretty good 2020-2021 year. We missed football badly. And we got football to look forward to soon, but obviously I was a void. Wrestling, a few other sports. It was really, really unfortunate. But as each season came, it's nice that we had a little bit more of a sport experience. So, Ian, this is, I guess, one of your last public appearances before your official graduate of New Canaan in a couple of days. So let me give you a minute or two and talk about anything you want to talk about, whether it's your broadcasting career, New Canaan, and anything you want. The floor is yours for a couple minutes.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity that you've given me over the last few months before the internship with the podcast, and now. It means a lot. I followed your work for years now. You've been a big source for how I prep for games, because I always know your information is correct. It's fun, and there's a lot of it. So I really appreciate you, because you've helped me out a lot more than you probably know with just prep over the years and keeping up with the teams, because people always ask how I know these things, and I'm not at all the games you are. So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank everyone at New Canaan High School and NCTV 78 for just being a fantastic program, and just letting me step in and do my thing from day one. Sophomore year, called Turkey Bowl in the fall, called the Ryan McAleer shot Stanford game 2019. And after those two amazing games, a great Turkey Bowl and a great buzzer beater, a couple amazing moments that any broadcaster would dream for at my age, that's when I knew I had to do this full time. So I quit playing football, decided to join the TV station full time, and I was the station manager this past year. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. This was a great sports season. It wasn't a great year for a ton of high school students with all the ups and downs, but for me, I really had a great year because I was able to do what I love. I was able to reach a bigger audience than normal, and I was able to share what I bring to the broadcast and what our crew brings to the broadcast with everybody at home. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in, and not just from New Canaan, but from people from towns who really have supported me and supported the program. People from Ridgefield have reached out, Wilton, Darien, people from across the pond, I guess you could say, have really supported what I've done. And the positive re-encouragement, it means a lot to me, and it keeps pushing me to be better every single day. So I appreciate all the thanks, and I just love doing it. And it's just, it's not a job when you love it. and I can't wait to continue to do it at Syracuse in the fall. But I will definitely miss being a regular high school student calling these games. I'll be back from time to time on NCTV 78, a college break here and there. I think I'll get back on the call. But for now, as a high school student, as you mentioned, pretty much all but over. So, I don't think it's really hit yet, but it's been a great run. And I appreciate all the support. And thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yep, and that's where I was going to go. I appreciate you and all that you've done. Not just the internship, and you've done a great job with everything, and your big project everybody will get to see in a couple of days. But if you told me I would ask a high school student to come and be a partner on my podcast, I don't think if you told me that a while ago, I'd say no way. There's just not a high school student that's capable of doing it. And as anybody who's listened to the podcast last couple of months know, you're more than capable. So
thank you, Dave.
Not just holding your own, but bringing something extra to the podcast. So your knowledge just shows how hard you work, how much prep work, and I don't compare too many people. A lot of people now know Cooper Boardman, who just graduated from Newhouse at Syracuse, which is where you're headed, and is now working in minor league baseball and is headed for a great career. And I know you're going to do the same, Ian. So
thank you, Dave.
I'm looking forward to following you with keen interest, and when you're calling Final Fours and things like that, just remember us little guys here.
Thank you. I hope I ever get to that one point. I will continue to work hard every single day like I am right now. But thank you. I definitely will not forget this amazing Fairfield County community. The athletics are fantastic, and so are the people. So thank you once again. Okay,
and before signing off here on not the last podcast of 2021, or even until the fall, but just the last regular weekly podcast. I'm going to take a little time off. I just want to real briefly just expand a little bit on some news that I put on the site. Starting in the fall, I'm going to be putting up a paywall and going to a subscription basis, which I've been real lucky during the almost 8 years now, the Ruden Report, to have a lot of good people in the business world, a lot of them sports parents who have given me advice, and all the trade publications and the media say that if you're a small media company, or as far as I'm concerned, real small boutique site, you've got to put up a paywall to grow. And I both recognize that, and at the same time, philosophically I have a problem with it in terms of where it comes to high school students. And as I wrote, I just remember what it was like when I was growing up from elementary school, in high school, and you saw your name in, I grew up in Westport, and you saw your name in the Westport News, and it was great. You felt proud, and you had a bragging father like I did, and he's telling everybody. And I hope, or I suspect that high school athletes are the same way right now and love to see coverage of themselves. They definitely want to be covered, because the biggest complaint I get is people think I'm biased when it's really absence of resources to be everywhere. So I want to change that. So I'm going subscription, but it's with a twist. And this one actually was my idea, and everybody agreed with it. The cost of a subscription is going to be pay what you want. And the main reason I'm doing that is I don't want any high school students to have to really pay to read about themselves, but there's not any way that I'm going to be able to give them free access. So I still have to work with my web team, but we're going to set it up. It will be no more than $1, and if we can set it up so that you can Venmo me a penny, we're going to do that. And then I'm going to everybody else, and sports parents, adults in particular, there's going to be a suggested price of between $25 and $30, and we're gonna do a little bit of a marketing campaign, and the hope is to help offset being able to let kids read about themselves pretty much for free. Maybe parents of means will have some different levels and might be willing to spend a little bit more so that so I can cover 2 games in a day more often, or 3 games, or we probably this spring, I'd have to count things up, but I purposely went out of the way and really tried to cover and go beyond my normal budget just to cover a lot of things, just to show the Ruden Report readership world what's possible with the right resources. So that's basically it in a nutshell. There'll be more to come. There's going to be, the newsletter is going to be content you can't get anywhere else, but if you subscribe at a certain price point, it's going to be free. And I'm working on, it looks like we're going to be able to maybe do some things where at a real higher price point, you could essentially be entered into a raffle, kind of like a silent auction, and hopefully we're going to have some tickets for sporting events that you could win for people who want to go at that price point. So a lot more to come in the future, but that just hopefully, so you hear it through me. That's what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and I hope the readership world will continue to support me as well as it has, because I love what I'm doing, and I want to give you all as much as I can. So that's the future of the Ruden Report. We'll probably start taking subscriptions around August, and the day after Labor Day we'll go to you have to be subscribed, and along those lines too, I'm also working on, we may have a cool site I'm working on as well for Football Media Day and bringing back Football Media Day. But that's look ahead in the future. This has really been looking behind, and that's the last Ruden Report podcast right on the 2020-21 season. I'm going to take a little bit of time off, and then we will have podcasts over the summer on a semi-regular basis, and we'll kind of figure out how we're going to do that in the days and weeks ahead. But for now, that's the Ruden Report podcast for this week. I again want to thank Ian Nicholas for doing such a great job, not only today, but through the winter and spring, and being a great partner. I want to thank Travis Bell for all his great sound editing work and making us sound better than we do, and he's going to continue to work with us, and I'm really lucky, and working with the Westport Library, and it's just been a great affiliation. Remind you again, all, you can subscribe to the Ruden Report podcast on iTunes and a number of other platforms, and we appreciate good reviews. Thanks again, and we'll be talking to you real soon.